Hello, everybody. Welcome to Hooks, Lines, and Hip Hop. We are a podcast coming out of Greenville, South Carolina, talking to you about the latest tracks and albums that we feel are worth reviewing. I am Hakeem Samra.
My name is Jacob Kobler. We're going to introduce ourselves a little, give you a little background on ourselves. Like I said, my name is Jacob Kobler. I'm 21 years old. I was born here in Greenville, South Carolina. My hobbies, I like to listen to music. I make music. I have a couple cars. I go to car shows. That's a little bit about me.
I am Hakeem Samra, 21 years old, Winthrop alumni, graduated with a BA in psychology, and I have been listening to hip-hop since I was about 12 years old. The first album I ever bought was The Carter 2 by Lil Wayne, and been loving it ever since.
All right, we're going to go over some of our favorite artists, and then we'll start into our topic for today. I have a top 15. I'm not going to put them in order. I'll just read them. I have to say Kanye West, J.O.O.D, Kendrick Lamar, Earl Sweatshirt, Common, Tyler the Creator, Pusha T, Chance, Eminem, Mos Def, Mac Miller, Travis Scott, Young Thug, Kid Cudi. I have a ton of favorites, but those are probably like my top 15.
I'm gonna say the ones I'm listening to right now, like heavily. Probably I got about 5 or 6. Probably be Earl Sweatshirt since he put out I Don't Like Shit, and since we went to that concert. Young Thug, been on since the Barter 6, never hopped off. Travis Scott, I think he's like the master of melody. Kanye West, 808s is a great album, and My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. And probably Lil Wayne, just again because he's been such an influence to me, and he's kind of one of the reasons why I hopped onto this genre, even though he hasn't been putting out anything that great recently. But I'll still always give him credit. He's a legend.
He's got 15 plus years of making music, which is incredible.
Yeah,
that he can stay relevant, even though we may not like the music that's coming out now. It's relevant and popular.
Yeah, and T.I. too. I love T.I.
True.
I think 2 kings of the South for sure.
All right, we're just going to go over like the goal of the show. We're going to introduce new albums that come out, review new albums, new singles. Just talk about the hip-hop culture. All right. The first album we're going to review on our first episode is going to be Black America Again. It's a Common album. Like I said before, I'm a big Common fan, so doing this as a first was really cool.
I think also another reason why we chose to review it is because of a lot of the social implications of this album and the controversies that have been going on in this country, particularly with the election of Donald Trump and a lot of the violence that has been experienced since, especially all the riots that have been going on in countries like, or not countries, the United States is the country, the cities like Seattle and Oakland, California, and New York. I think if people had a chance to listen to one album to almost as a coming to Jesus moment, it would be this album. So let's jump right into it, Jake.
All right. The first track is called Joy and Peace. I love Common. He mentions it, one of the lines, he says, "Is this a God dream? Like, yay, sing it." If you listen to the album, you'll hear all these references to other relevant artists. Common just loves music.
I think another big theme in this album was, we talked about this a lot, was the Tribe Called Quest shout outs. He shouts out a lot of artists that he likes in a very intellectual way and just very clever. He also talks about listening to Amy Winehouse's remix of a song, I believe. But I think the biggest thing about this album is the way he incorporated gospel into this. And Jake, you said it kind of reminded you of songs that you would hear on like plantations back in the day, the tone of the singing especially, like old gospel and like almost old slavery kind of tones in a way. You think?
Yes, definitely. It's all, I mean, like you said, with the gospel riddled throughout it, it has huge ties to Christianity. He talks about God, and not just Christianity. He talks about about his father reading the Quran. Just an awesome connection to all these different religions and cultures.
I think another thing that's important to talk about in this album is the fact that Common's ability to rhyme midway through a song is unparalleled. We were talking about this. There's probably only like 5 MCs that we mentioned that were really gifted at doing this. And forgive us if there are more. If there are more, you can definitely tweet us at HLH Pod, something like that.
Yes, HLH Podcast.
Yep, and that's our Twitter. We were talking about Earl Sweatshirt, MF Doom, Common, and who were the other two?
Eminem does that a lot.
Yeah. So that ability to rap midway through, and it's just so clever. And I think an important thing to mention is that Common, what he does in this album is he brings social issues to the table without making it sound angry, without dumbing down the message, and most importantly, without making it just sound too boom bapish, too overly lyrical to the point where it's not even a song anymore. It's just like someone just rapping at you. I think melody is important in our current time in hip hop, and he doesn't seem to stray away from melody.
Right, and I like the fact that, I mean, obviously we've never heard Common sing. It probably wouldn't be good. So he uses melody with his features. He has Bilal on several. He has several female hooks. He has John Legend on a hook. So he doesn't just come at you, like he said, in a spoken word type way. He knows how important melody is to a song. So if he can't do it himself, he has other talented artists come in that are like-minded individuals that adds to his craft.
I think my favorite feature, speaking about female singers, is Sid the Kid on both of her features, especially on Red Wine, though. I think she's just very ethereal in her singing, and it really just brings a certain warmth to that song, especially Red Wine, because I think the whole point of that song is like a relaxation kind of feeling, feeling that like you're drinking wine. You know, I think one of the biggest things about music is its ability to take you somewhere else, because music is a form of escapism. And, you know, artists like Young Thug, even more so Future and Travis Scott, they have this ability when they're singing or when they're rapping, that mumble flow. The point is to kind of simulate the effects of codeine. And I think the women on here, Sid and Elena, both kind of are able to simulate the warmth and casualty of, or just casualness, not casualty, casualness that comes with like drinking red wine with someone you really like, and the warmth and emotion that comes from that.
The melody and the subject content really puts you in the feel of what he's talking about. Like he said before about the old plantation singing. In the song, he's talking about home, and it's all about how all this bad is happening around us, but eventually they'll be home. And I believe that he's talking about heaven. It's never really clear. He does say going home to be with God, but also, I mean, every religion has a God figure. So he does do a really good job of putting you in the realm of what he's talking about.
Yeah. And I think the three biggest topics of discussion on this are obviously he talks about the Black Lives Matter movement, speaking about how he knows black people know that Black Lives Matter to them, but it's kind of trying to get through to all of America that Black Lives Matter. And also he talks a lot, we said, about mass incarceration. That's a huge topic of his, and how it's juxtaposition to slavery in the past. Also, he has a few love songs on here, like Love Star, like Red Wine, where it's, although the topic matter is kind of sexual in a way, he doesn't make it so objectifying, and that's something I think that's been forgotten in hip-hop. Like, you hear songs about sex so much, and the only thing you can think of is bust that ass and pop that pussy. Those are the two biggest topics that I hear in my head. Or you know, she's so drugged up and all this stuff. You know, Rick Ross talking about you ain't even know it. It's so terrible. So I admire that Rick. I admire that Common is just able to speak about these topics and talk about how he wants to raise a family with this woman. Talk about how he wants to take part of him and her and make them. It's just very beautiful, and
I think it's his age too. I mean, Not exactly sure how old he is. I know he's older
in
than
his
30.
40s.
He's in his 40s?
Yeah, I think
So, I mean, you look at younger rappers like Young Thug and Travis Scott, they grew up in a different time.
Yeah.
And I think that Common was probably taught to respect women. So he hasn't really bought into that aspect of the culture.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, what else? I think another thing I really liked was on Home and Pyramid. He's spitting, and we were telling you on Pyramid he uses the Old Dirty Bastard sample, and he's talking about how the MCs that be burning hot, and I think he's almost using ODB as like a way to hype himself up, and I really love that as well. He takes the music I think he enjoyed and places it in his rhymes or in his samples, and I think that's really great and something that
I did like in Pyramids. It was one of the first lines he says, they tell me to rap for 19-year-olds.
Yeah.
And the typical age range of the demographic of hip-hop music, usually the listeners are between teenage years and 35. If you listen to Common's music outside of features, all his albums sound like this. He hasn't really changed. He doesn't hop to the newest form of music, like trap is blown up. You don't see Common on a trap beat. He stayed the same. He stuck to what he knows. I mean, even around people, I mean, he's on good music. He's with Kanye West, and we always know Kanye West's sound is changing all the time. And usually he's ahead of the curve, but Common has stayed to what he knows. I think that's really cool.
I think that's also another thing you can see in the most recent release from Tribe Called Quest is some people have taken to a sound and they stick with it. You know, I don't think you're gonna hear. I don't want to hear certain people change. I don't want to hear Common. I heard Common when he did that feature with Big Sean, and even then, I mean,
Switch Up.
Yeah, Switch Up. That came out. That came out when he
was on Hall of Fame, wasn't it?
Yep, it came out on Hall of Fame. One of the most underwhelming projects by Big Sean. But I think even on his feature, I never really listened to a full Common project up until this one, and I really want to go back and hear more because when I hear his features, I think now he's stepping his lyrical ability down to meet up with them. He's still spitting really well, but not on the same level he is on his own album, and now I'm starting to think he was just like fooling the mainstream crowd a little bit, you know, trying to match up with Big Sean because Big Sean can't hop on that level.
Right.
Common.
When he was talking about a Tribe Called Quest and how they stuck to their sound for 15, 20 years.
20 years.
I was actually at work the other day playing the new Tribe Called Quest album, and a friend of mine that really likes hip hop says, "Man, this shit sucks. What are you listening to?" I said, "I cannot believe you just said that." I said, "Have you heard about Tribe Called Quest?" He was like, "No." I said, "I'm sure on Twitter you saw about the rapper Phife Dawg dying." He was like, "Yeah, I saw that." I was like, "He was in Tribe Called Quest." And it's like, "Oh, okay." And it's just a generational thing, and it's cool to see artists stick to what they've done. I was at a concert for work the other day, and I saw a guy in a Wu-Tang shirt. And I said, "Oh man, I like Wu-Tang, that's really cool." And he was in his like mid-40s. And he was like, "Yeah," he said, "I don't really listen to rap anymore." He said that just kind of changed. I was like, "Dude," I said, "Ghostface is still making music." And he was shocked by that fact.
Yeah.
So it's cool that they've stuck to that and not deviated to the new style just to make money.
Yeah. I think, you know, when Common says the line about not wanting to rap to 19-year-olds, do you think there are people in that age range who can appreciate Common, who still also enjoy like the Young Thugs and Travis Scotts? I know we do, but I think we've also been a little more open to older hip hop. You got to think like some people. Not everyone is a hip hop head, and unfortunately, what worries me right now is hip hop is at its peak in popularity, and eventually every peak comes down. And this sort of trap craze right now reminds me a little bit of the 2005 era of hip hop, where it was like ringtone rap.
Yeah.
Like shake that Laffy Taffy.
Right.
Like no one is listening
Lollipop.
to Laffy Taffy. Lollipop is still a good song.
That's a little essential.
I'll still listen to Lollipop, all right. But yeah, I'm worried that this craze is gonna come crashing down.
Well, with everything comes and goes,
Right.
in popularity.
But I don't want to see hip hop go. I don't know if maybe just a certain area of rap will be affected, or if the whole genre takes a hit. Like, I don't know. I'm kind of worried about that, but I think if you enjoy hip hop, this is definitely an album to gravitate towards.
Definitely.
Because it's so soulful. And I told you this. I think if you took the instrumentals off and let Common rap a cappella, it would just be a straight spoken word piece.
Right.
And it's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Definitely. I like that he balances the addressing racism in a nice way. I mean, if anybody's listened to the Vic Mensa album, it's obviously pretty radical on the other side of the racial issues.
Yeah.
And he balances it really well. T.I.'s album was a little bit more in the middle than Vic Mensa's versus Common's. He saw the parallels on both sides. One of the songs he says, he's talking about how black people were stolen from Africa and brought over and brought into slavery and how they were mistreated. But he also talks about the black on black crime, saying that black people are stealing other black people's lives the same way that essentially racism is stealing their lives. So it's nice to see that he sees other sides and doesn't just stick to one point of view.
Yeah, I think the only song that I would say where he comes off not as radical, but as it's a bit of a more angry tone would be the title track with Stevie Wonder, Black America Again. I think there's a bit more seriousness, a bit more anger in his tone on that track more than any other one. But it's still something that you can listen to, and you get a lot out of it. I think it has a high replay value. Also, we need to speak about this is the production of that album.
Definitely,
the production is absolutely beautiful. I'm a huge fan of jazz. My dad grew up asking me to listen to jazz. I've been to a few live clubs with him as well, and it's amazing.
we were talking before we started this podcast about how it's very Roots-esque. And in one of the lines we were reading through some different reviews on the album, mulling over ideas, and one of them mentioned how he's good friends with Questlove and the Roots.
Yeah.
So that definitely has a huge influence.
Yeah, most definitely. And I could see if Common were to go on tour, I could see him going on tour with the Roots and performing this. And I would hope he would stop by somewhere around here because I would love to see that.
We were just talking about Black America again. He has another motif that pops up talking about incarceration, talking mainly about education versus incarceration. He says something about how it's easier and cheaper to incarcerate somebody than to educate them. And I'm a firm believer that a lot of the crime we're seeing in places like Common's hometown of Chicago is because of education.
Yeah. And Southside Chicago, if you guys don't know, is one of the most violent cities in all of America. Like, I think they say people are getting gunned down there like every 16 seconds. And there's not much cops can do with the amount of gang activity going on there. And going back to younger music and trap music, the drill movement came out of Southside Chicago. You know, you had
Right.
Chief Keef and Lil Bibby and G.O.O.D now, or Lil Herb. And while it was great music and it has a lot of energy, do you think that music, Jake, do you think it contributed to that sort of violence?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I'm not saying it's about all people, but when you are alone, essentially without parents, or your parents aren't around a lot, and you're on the streets as a form of entertainment or preoccupation, you're going to turn to these role models that may not be the best role models to be turning to. This is off topic, but Chance the Rapper is a huge role model for people in Chicago, and I think if they had more role models like him, you'd see the rate of violence go down. With education, I mentioned this before at the beginning that I make music. I have an interlude on one of my albums I'm working on that I talk about Chicago, and part of the reason is I'm friends with a lot of my old high school teachers, and they've talked about how gratifying being a teacher is because they see their work really develop in humans. So it's not gratifying for teachers to go work in Chicago and they see their kids drop out, get murdered, be incarcerated. It's just not a return on their investment, so you don't have a lot of good qualified teachers going there. Crosses over to police departments. Nobody wants to be a cop in Chicago. I didn't mention this before, but I'm a criminal justice major. I would be terrified to be a cop in Chicago. There's so many things that are different there than here. And they have cops that have left other departments because of excessive force complaints, other things like that. So they have a smaller pool to pull from than, say, LA would have, or here in Greenville, South Carolina, they have higher. Trying to think of the word.
More people applying.
They have more people applying, people that are more well developed for the jobs.
Yeah. And also, I think it's important. There's a lot of tension, especially now, with African Americans and cops, and even just cops and young people, young minorities. I'm from an Arabic background, and growing up in the South, I encountered some racism and discrimination. However, I'm a funny person, I'd like to think. So I just try and laugh about it, but it's not always that simple. And in areas like Chicago and LA and New York, there's more of this. Cops feel this need to be more militant in their enforcement. Something that we don't encounter here as much in South Carolina. I don't think that cops have to be as militant because they're not dealing with these large gangs and all this violence.
Definitely.
And, Rico Reckless, another Chicago rapper, and we're going off on a bit of a tangent, but I think it's important to address this because it relates to a lot of what Common was talking about in the album. Rico Reckless said that when he was going to school in Chicago, especially in high school and stuff, there was not really an option for a lot of young black people. When they went to school, the school colors were the gang colors, and if you weren't involved in the gang lifestyle, you could just be taken out just for being young and black in that area. And sometimes these kids felt like in order to be protected, they had to be gang affiliated. So it's just a lot of difficulties, and there's just a need for educational reform all over this country, and different training of police, perhaps. It's a lot, and I think the fact that we're talking about this just because of listening to this album speaks to the power of Common's message,
right,
and what he could get you to speak about that you normally wouldn't have.
And like I said, Common hasn't changed. He's been rapping about this subject matter for a while. It's just in the forefront now. It's in the news. It's not just, that's black people problems, that's minority problems. It's America problems. We see violence all over. And I think if the youth grabbed a hold of this album and actually listened to it, it would be extremely empowering.
Yeah, I highly recommend this album. Anybody who really enjoyed To Pimp a Butterfly, I told Jake this. I think if you were to put these two up against each other, this Common would beat Kendrick in a way, just on speaking on a more direct way of speaking about issues in America, about mass incarceration, about blacks, about Black Lives Matter movement. I think while Kendrick did amazing with songs like Blacker the Berry, where he calls himself a monkey, and
he says, but I want you to understand that I'm a proud monkey.
Yeah, says and I remember listening to Dead and Hip Hop say, this line made them angry, and that's the point of that song. It's like you see, like, this is supposed to rile you up a little bit.
Yeah, he got people talking.
Exactly, and that's one way of doing it. But I think Common went about it in a way of a more political route. I think he went about it in a way that was very intelligent and more direct. Not saying Kendrick wasn't intelligent. However, I think Kendrick also talks a lot about fame and the aspects of fame and how it affected him. He's talking to the devil and throughout the album. Lucy, and how Lucy can make his dreams come true.
And I think that, like, the fame, it's a bit, Common's famous, but he's not Kendrick famous.
Right.
I'm sure that Kendrick has a lot more followers on social media than Common does.
Yeah.
So that is something he raps about his life, and that's a main struggle in his life is dealing with fame.
Yeah. And again, I think Kendrick also, his delivery is a bit more, has a bit more antics to it with the different voice inflections and like, I'm sick and tired of being tired. You know, when he does like those little effects to his voice. I don't think Common has that. There's not as many gimmicks and ways to get people to listen. I think it's more about, do you like the raps?
Yeah.
And I can honestly say yes. I don't think there's a song on here that I would take away. I don't think there was anything that was underwhelming. I love the whole project. I think it's a roller coaster ride.
Yes, it's. I wrote down a few things that I wasn't a huge fan of. I mean, I like the album as a whole. It's amazing. I like the Stevie Wonder. When we were reading the track list, we were looking to see like, oh, what album should we review? And I said, well, I'm a big Common fan. Let's do Black America again. And I hadn't really listened to it yet. And I saw the Stevie Wonder feature. I was like, oh, this is gonna be cool. I'm sure Stevie Wonder really respects Common. He's probably gonna have a cool verse. And then it got to the end, and it was just him saying, we're rewriting the Black American story. I think he said it like 12 times. While the melody was awesome, and it's cool to see hear Stevie Wonder. You don't hear him often anymore. It was really cool. I wish he'd have had a longer part, but I didn't create the album, so.
Yeah. I think, and you said this earlier, you would have switched John Legend and Stevie Wonder's part.
Yeah.
Like you would have had John Legend do the Stevie Wonder thing.
John Legend's voice is so powerful. I think it would have made that one single line, "We're rewriting the Black American story," would have made it powerful just because of how powerful his voice is. And I think it'd have been cool for fans, like I said, to have a longer insight to Stevie Wonder in 2016.
I think that's a good point. However, I agree. I love Stevie Wonder's delivery on it. And John Legend's voice when it came in, I was very shocked. I was telling Jake this. I don't listen to a lot of R&B unless it's kind of the more like the new wave R&B, like the Bryson Tiller and the Roy Woods. But John Legend's voice is extremely powerful, and I still think that they both did a great job. But to me, Sid steals the show.
Yes.
Out of all the features, I've been a huge fan of the internet for a very long time, and something about her voice, just she could read the Yellow Book pages to me, and I would listen.
That's true. For those of y'all that don't know, she is in a band called The Internet. They're great. Look them up. Yep. Some more things that I would have wished were better, which this is just selfish things really, like the Stevie Wonder thing. This is very similar. The BJ the Chicago feature. I wish it was longer. Huge fan of him. He actually, the first dance song in my wedding was Shine by BJ the Chicago Kid. I'm a huge fan of him. I wish his part was longer, but.
Yeah, I don't even think it's not an extremely memorable.
No, it's just a hook. I mean, it's the same hook, and it's 4 lines each hook.
Yeah. I don't know, man. This is a lot. It's a lot to digest. I've listened through about 3 times now, and I still think there's a lot to pull from. This is definitely one of those albums where I don't think you have to read the lyrics with anything. However, reading the lyrics helped me appreciate the album even more.
Right. My wife does not like hip hop. She just does not like it. But there'll be songs I'll be like, oh, this is so cool. And she'll be like, oh, here's a cool beat and a guy talking. And I was like, it's more than just talking. So a lot of times if there's a line with like a cool metaphor or some cool wordplay, I'll pull up Rap Genius and let her listen as it's going, and then she can appreciate what it is. And there's a lot of stuff. If you don't listen to the album or the song several times, there's going to be stuff you miss. There's old songs that I'll put on and be like, oh, I never heard that line before. I never made that connection in the wordplay. So I think that's a huge part, especially when you have somebody as lyrical as Common, where it's not punchline rap like we see from Lil Wayne and 2 Chainz, where you can obviously tell the joke, or you can hear the joke and know the punchline at the end, where Common's is more wordplay and puns and metaphors rather than jokes.
I think speaking of puns, the best pun 2 Chainz has ever done is bathtub the size of swimming pool's backstroke to my children's room.
I cannot believe we just went down a 2 Chainz road on the first episode.
I'm sorry, I had to see it.
We just lost followers on Twitter.
Oh no, we did. I think another thing that makes it, when you even Drake, who I think he's very lyrical, especially for pop rap. Even though he's got the Billboard melodies, he when he's saying a punchline, you can hear it. It's very pungent, or it's at the end with that middle rhyme rapping. It's a lot more subtle. It's something that you kind of have to be looking for, something that you want to listen for. But Common is very intelligent by choosing this more laid-back, jazzy production where those beats are not going to be as overpowering as, say, like a Metro Boomin or a London on the Track.
Yeah.
That's another reason why I think some people don't need to hop on this trap wave. Like, I mean, it works for some, but for somebody who's just straight hip-hop rapping, you can do just as much. Like, you can make it just as pleasant to the ears without gravitating towards.
I think you can play this to somebody who used to listen to rap music, say in their 40s or 50s now, and say, "Hey, listen to this album. You really like it." I think they will like it, and I think Common is respected because of the way he makes music. We were preparing some of our content for this, and we were listening to the track "The Day Women Took Over," and I was shocked. I pulled up. I was just reading through some comments and facts about that one track, and they said that Common premiered this track at the White House for NPR's Tiny Desk concert, and he also did the song off this album, "Letter to the Free" and "Little Chicago Boy," about his father who died 2 years ago from cancer. So for the White House to agree to let a rapper come in and actually perform, I think speaks volumes to what he's talking about in his music.
Well, and that's also again talking about rap's rise in popularity. At the White House dinner recently that happened, Chance the Rapper and Frank Ocean.
Yeah, they're both invited.
I mean, if that doesn't speak to how popular hip hop's becoming, I don't know what will. I mean, I know Frank Ocean is more R&B, but R&B and hip hop now are so intertwined with people like Drake and Chance the Rapper who sing in their delivery. It's impossible to ignore, you know. What did you just
I'm
do?
making noises. I'm breaking my home studio.
Don't do that. We need the studio.
We were like he was talking about. I think a lot of like my parents, they grew up and they were listening to music from the 70s to the 90s. I mean, heavily listening to music as teenagers and young adults do. So the rappers they had to look at were Tupac and N.W.A., who rapped a lot about drugs and violence. So not that didn't have its place and not that it's influential and important to the culture. A lot of older people see that, and that's what new hip-hop, that's what it's about. When Chance the Rapper may be talking about violence, but he's talking about how it affected him, and he's helping people through it. I mean, I don't think in today's world, I don't think NWA would have been invited to the White House.
No, they actually got FBI cease and desist letters
Right.
when Fuck the Police came out.
Yeah, so I think that it does speak volumes to how popular hip hop has become and how influential it's become to the youth.
Yeah, and again, we can't forget Common did come up in the 90s. I think I would put him more so. You know, you've got conscious hip hop. I think if you haven't listened, definitely check out Brand Nubian. That's a group that I recently just listened to their debut album, and it's very much about black thought, about black women not disrespecting themselves, about keeping. There's a line about like keeping your hair natural. It's just there's conscious hip hop out there. It's just not as placed in the forefront, and Common, with as big as a name as he is able to do what Kendrick did in, I think, a more polished way just because of his experience. I don't think Kendrick had a bad album. To Pimp a Butterflies is
I don't think it would be. I don't think Kendrick could ever have a bad album.
No, definitely not. But I think with Common's Common's approach to these subject matters. I think it's more direct. I think it will wake some people up. I think it'll bring attention to a lot of things, like, for example, the Maria Sharapova and Serena Williams line. Jake.
Oh yeah, we talked about this before.
Before
we started today.
You said you weren't a fan of it.
No, well, at first I'm thinking, well, I mean, look at titles. Serena Williams has countless more titles than Maria Sharapova does.
Right.
So I'm thinking, oh, that can't be true. Then I'm thinking, oh, well, if he put it in his rap, obviously he probably did some research. So we did some research on our own.
Mm-hmm. And I pulled up a article written by The Atlantic, I think it was, and they talked about how Maria Sharapova out-earned Serena Williams by $10 million. At first, when Common said that line, I thought it was going to be like a couple $100,000. And then when I heard 10 million, I was like, holy shit, this what is this? And then they were cited saying that it could be a race thing, but it's more so about Maria Sharapova's like attraction, her typical like Eurocentric white look. You know, she's more of a traditional beauty than Serena Williams.
Traditionally, society and the culture would view her more attractive than Serena Williams. Right. Not to say that I'm sure there's someone out there, several people out there that think Serena Williams is better looking than Maria Sharapova.
Including myself. I do have a cover I'm showing to Jake. It's Fader. It's Serena Williams on the cover of Fader. So I think there's going to be more attention brought to her as time goes on. Obviously, there's attention brought to her because of her talent. That's something you can't ignore. But I think she'll be seen more as a sexual icon in the future. Not saying that she has to be, but with that comes more commercialism, more sponsorship money. Like if you look even at like a Nicki Minaj and Iggy Azalea, for example, they were both like sex icons in hip hop, and I don't see Iggy Azalea earning more than Nicki Minaj.
No.
Or being seen as more attractive than Nicki Minaj, especially not now.
No.
Since she was laughing.
And there was a sub part of that article that was talking about commercial endorsements. Yeah. I know personally I've seen Maria Sharapova on ESPN commercials doing perfume, different beauty products. So there is a big difference there.
And that's Common's way of talking about celebrity, kind of in a way, are sort of on the same topic matter as To Pimp a Butterfly, but in a very subtle way, and also still relaying back that black message. You know, using names like Maria Sharapova and Serena Williams is intentional, because you're not going to necessarily pay attention if it were like a lesser known name. You know?
And like that, just a thought just shot into my mind. I only know about tennis players because a good friend of ours that went to high school, Adam, played tennis, and I do watch sports, so I knew who Maria Sharapova was. Yep. But I'm sure there's a lot of people that will listen to this album and automatically know who Serena Williams is, but not know Maria Sharapova. So that may make the line even stronger that way. Now this may be totally off basis, but I don't know a lot of African Americans that really love watching tennis. So that could also attribute to the fact that Maria Sharapova is not as well known as Serena Williams. Mm-hmm. I mean, I personally don't like watching tennis.
Yeah, I don't really either. My dad used to play tennis, and he watches a lot of tennis, and he can't get me to sit down for more than about 2 minutes. And again, this is also, later in the article, it says that Roger Federer is one of the highest paid tennis players. And that has to do also with the amount of income that women make as opposed to men, you know, showing that even Maria Sharapova, though she makes $10 million more than Serena Williams probably makes 15 or 20 million less than Federer, for example. So,
and that also brought something to my mind. I'm sure that there are far more whites in tennis than blacks.
Yeah. Same thing with golf. You know, the only like huge black golfer that you know of is Tiger Woods. I don't know of any others. Right. I don't even know any other. To be fair, I work at a country club, and I don't know many golfers except for Tiger Woods, and he's way past his prime now, and he's still the biggest thing in golf, as he should be.
So, off on another tangent, but it's lines like this that Common brings up that gets people talking.
Yeah.
I mean, we spent time researching tennis players, whereas we would not have done that before.
Right.
And we're talking about social issues in tennis.
Yep.
So,
and another thing, again, this album is pleasant to the ears, and it's also really lyrical. For people who are looking for lyrics, you got it. For people who are looking for something melodic, something pleasant to listen to, I think that was also the point of the features. Thinking back on it, Jake, you were saying at first before we brought up Sid the Kid, John Legend was really the only huge the features sang a lot. Bilal and BJ the Chicago Kid they're great.
No, they just have a hook. They don't really have their own verse.
And Stevie Wonder doesn't have much of he just has the hook as well. And I think that was also something more calculated where the feature doesn't outshine the artist or Common, the rapper, but still offers something that you can play in your car, something that has a little bit of a pop appeal, while still being able to talk about these issues. The more we break this album down, the more I just think there's a lot of intelligence to the way it was put together, and this is definitely going to be on my top 10 list for this year.
Definitely. Now we're getting towards the end. I'll go over two of my favorite songs from the album, and we'll let Hakeem do his two favorites from the album. I can't rank these because they're both amazing. I'll start with the first one in order on the album. It's Little Chicago Boy. I mentioned it earlier in the podcast. Common's talking about his father, who died of cancer 2 years ago, and he talks about how he talked to his father. He said there was never a dull conversation with his father. His father talked about smoking and selling drugs to survive in Chicago. Or he went from Chicago. He was from Ohio, right?
No, he played in Ohio.
Okay.
He ended up going to college in Ohio.
Regardless, he was selling drugs and taking drugs just to survive and through his time. And he was talking about how his father went and played basketball in college, got drafted he got drafted to the NBA but never made it to the NBA. He played in the ABA for 1 year. Just talks about memories he has of his father. I keep trying to pull up I want to read a lyric, but I can't get my phone to work.
He also talks about the legacy of his legacy living on, his dad's legacy living on through him, which I think was really cool. Just adding a little.
I'm looking for it.
Go ahead.
He did have, I couldn't find online any proof to this, but at the end of the song he has a male voice talking, and it's made to sound like his father. I don't know if it is actually a phone message that Common had of his father's, but it was really cool. Definitely a cool part of the album. He's talking about praying in the hospital while his father is breathing heavy and coughing. And he says, in the background, he was talking, I was praying. Our Father, take care of my father. As far as he went, may I go farther. May our dreams and legacies live through our children. Though I can't touch him, I can still feel him. So he talks about the legacy that his father wanted him to leave behind, and the legacy that Common wants to leave behind through his family. There's something cool in here. I really hope that it's true, because it was a cool line. He said, talking about his father, he said he'd walk around in them Air Jordans I gave him. I said, Pops, they're from Mike. Man, you better save them. I really hope that's a true thing, because that's cool. My second favorite was the song, where'd it go? Letter to the Free. That one really has a lot of gospel undertone. We've seen movies like Django Unchained with breaking stuff again, where they're showing just awful pictures of slavery, and they're singing these old hymns and gospels. And I could not help but think about that the whole time that song was playing. The hook is really powerful, and that's where you hear that. It's just they keep saying freedom, freedom come, hold on, it won't be long. He talks about incarceration in this one. He talks about, he has a line that says, slavery's still alive, check Amendment 13. He said, not whips and chains, I subliminal. The significance of that, slavery, obviously, there were whips and chains. Now, cars are referred to as whips, and people still wear chains. That's what he meant by that's subliminal.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of imagery and metaphors. He talks about the Black Lives Matter in this movement in this song, as we mentioned earlier on. Definitely check out, if you don't have time to listen to the whole album, listen to Letter to the Free and Little Chicago Boy.
Yeah. I think my two favorite songs on here, because if you weren't going to mention Letter to the Free, then I was, so I'm glad you did. Pyramids is definitely my favorite on this album. I'm a huge fan of people like MF Doom, and it's just, I like witty lines. I like something that's gonna like make me laugh or go ha ha.
Before we go, we didn't mention this. We both have done spoken word. We both went to the same high school.
Mm-hmm.
We had a senior project, and Hakeem wrote a whole book of poetry for his senior project. So we both have underlying grips in the poetry.
Mm-hmm.
So we both have a passion for well-written lyrical rap.
Definitely.
Sorry to interrupt.
No. Thank you.
I'm gonna let you finish.
But he has a line where in Pyramids where he says, "In theory, though low-end scenario and Soundboy burial drove me to classic material." That in theory, though low-end scenario, the scenario in theory just getting flipped, and it's a low-end theory. It's like an homage to A Tribe Called Quest, and again. This speaks to the timeliness of this album, with like Tribe Called Quest putting out their newest album, and with Phife Dawg dying, like he's great. He's great. Like, not only was this album great in its material, but it was also great in the timing that it was released, and that's huge to me. Another song I really liked was Red Wine. Red Wine again, mainly because the two features on here. Sid the Kid and what was her name? And Elena. It's so dreamy, and it's such a beautiful track. And coming from someone who's a fan of older weekend projects like Thursday, I really like anything that's just kind of airy, nice to listen to, very warm. It's a great track, and I think that also shows the two extremes of this album. If you listen to Pyramids and Red Wine, very lyrical, but also very melodic and a joy to listen to. Really love it. Would recommend it.
So overall, a great project.
Yeah. We should have a rating system.
That will come. It's definitely over an 80% for me if we're rating it out of a 0 to 100 scale.
Okay.
It's definitely above an 80 for sure.
Yeah. Okay. I would say
we don't have a rubric, so it would be hard to.
No, we don't. But I would give this like a high 80 to like a low 90.
I mean, we did both say it would be, if we, at the end of the year, we're going to rate our top 10 albums individually. So this is definitely going to be in that top 10. So obviously a great album.
Yeah. Yep. And now towards where we're coming to the end, we had an idea for the podcast, possibly doing a hidden hits. These are like older songs or newer songs that we really like to listen to, that we enjoy, that we want to put you guys onto as well. For me, this is an older song. This came out 2 years ago. It's Ramriddlz, Sweeterman. Absolutely beautiful track. And if he has one line where he refers to his penis as a weenie, which is very cringy, but still a great song, and something you can definitely bump in the car. And I'm sure you guys heard Drake's remix of it.
What's the remix called?
Sweeterman.
Okay, so it was the same.
Sweeterman. Yeah, Sweeterman remix, but this is the original. It's by Ramriddlz, and it's got that Jamaican vibe that everybody's come to love. that Drake put us all on to.
Well, needless to say, this man's probably super rich now because of Drake.
Oh yeah,
I'm sure
yeah.
Drake paid royalties for this, so
I hope so.
good for him.
But a great track, and I think we're gonna have some sort of a link or reference to the songs at the bottom.
Yes, definitely. We will put the links to our hidden hits as well as links to the internet. We mentioned them earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Anything we feel significant that we mentioned that you can find your way to, we will definitely link that at the bottom.
Yeah.
My hidden hit actually just came out this week. I was at work on my break and I was reading through and I saw Fader put out this article about a guy named Kevin Abstract. Really cool. The guy that produced his album and mixed his album also was the producer that produced Channel Orange for Frank Ocean. Yeah. They sound a little bit alike.
You got the whole thing?
Yeah, it came out 2 days ago.
What?
Yes.
Why am I not seeing it?
I don't know. This is not a bootleg or a leak. This is iTunes.
I'm sorry. I have this on my music waiting as well because he put me onto this guy as well a couple of days ago. Very good.
It's listed on iTunes as alternative music, but he raps a little bit and he sings a little bit. Very Frank Ocean-esque. It's not emulating Frank Ocean at all, but you can see the parallels, especially in their subject matter. It's a great listen. It's only 16 songs, but it's only 37 minutes, so it's pretty quick. Songs aren't very long. Very cool album. I look forward to listening to it and evaluating it more here in the near future.
Yeah, I think there'll definitely be a review to come for that album.
Yes.
I don't want to hype anyone up. Also, if you guys have any reviews that you would like to hear from us, hit us up on Twitter, and our Twitter handle it's Hooks, Lines, and Hip Hop. That's the name, and the handle is HLHPO. That's HLHPO. If you guys want to follow us on Twitter, you'll find out when our reviews are coming out. We might throw on a few favorite tracks that we hear throughout the week that maybe we didn't talk about on the podcast.
Right. The Twitter handle is operated by both of us, so you'll hear some stuff that we'll put up, some stuff that he'll put up. So
yeah, definitely check us out, and thank you guys for listening. This has been the first episode of Hooks, Lines, and Hip Hop Podcast.